opportunity zones are not all commercial, they're in neighborhoods. And if you're looking to buy rentals or even multi-use or buildings or anything, a lot of them are in zones. They just want to bring up the neighborhood.
Welcome to Truly Passive Income. I'm Neil Henderson.
And I'm Clint Harris.
Well, Dwan Bent-Twyford, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on, guys. I'm excited to talk to both of you.
Absolutely. So you have an incredible journey from being a single mother to a real estate investor. Can you walk us through back to when you first decided to dive into real estate investing?
Yeah, I really, when I think about my story, I really have such a crazy story. So I got married. I waited till I was 30 to have kids. I wanted to be like, I think some of the things, Clint, that you're doing. Like I wanted to be the stay-at-home mom, go on all the field trips, be the Girl Scout cookie mom. Like I wanted to do all those fun things. So I waited to have kids. So I was a little older. I got married. My daughter was 8 months old. My husband and I split up really unexpectedly. And so I had $75 in my purse. I had no car. Ended up losing my house in foreclosure. Like it was just, man, it was like a come to Jesus moment, like in the worst possible way, like everything. And so through that, I thought, well, now I have to work and I have to figure out how to raise this child. And I'm already 30. So I realize that at 30, if I start working for somebody else, I'll probably work until I'm 50 because I got to raise this child. I thought, or I could work for myself and I could just take a chance. I could do something. If it doesn't work, I could always get a job. So I wasn't even looking for real estate. That's the funniest part. I wasn't even looking for real estate. I was just looking for something I could do from home. And as it turned out, I met some people and they said, oh, yeah, we buy houses, we fix them up, we sell them. And I'm really naive. I don't know anything. And I thought that they were talking about decorating. So it's like, oh, they buy them, they fix them up, they sell them. I can decorate. I have great taste. I'm going to be that's what I'm going to be a decorator. And as it turns out, rehabbing and decorating are not the same thing, which I learned. I moved into my first house. I started working on it and I didn't know how to do anything. So I had to go to Home Depot and take classes. And I rehabbed this whole house. And I made $22,000. And I was like, that's it. I'm doing this forever. And 35 years later, I'm still doing it.
That's amazing. And I know that you have wholesaled over 2,000 houses, which is mind-blowing. So at some point you moved, you did a flip, a handful of flips, however many, and then you started finding your own leads. And you did not wholesale. I said flip. I'm sorry. Wholesale. You didn't wholesale 2,000 properties without having a really good system in place and building that out. So unpack that for us and your journey as a wildly successful wholesaler.
Something way back, because you got to remember, I started doing investing before Google and before cell phones and even before pagers. Like I'm dating myself here, but those things didn't exist. And the people that I met, they said, well, we just go to the courthouse, we write down names and addresses and we just go knock on doors. I was like, well, okay, I can do that. How hard can that be? So I probably knocked on doors for 5 or 6 years solid to find all my leads because that was the only thing that I knew to do. And then as you get into it, you learn more. So, I'm writing ads, I'm advertising in school newsletters, I'm mailing postcards, I'm doing all the things. And then, of course, you get a couple of assistants and then you have people doing things for you. And one thing just leads to another. And I mean, I was probably averaging 100, 150 deals a year wholesaling because I was a machine. And I never wanted to find myself in that broke, poor position again. So I think I overcompensated to make sure I would always have money. But after a while, you realize like, well, I can wholesale till the end of time. But then when I don't work, where's my money coming from? Which transitioned me into other things. But I love wholesaling. And I got to tell you, I still like knocking on doors. I'm in Iowa. We went door knocking the other day looking for a couple little rentals around here. I still like to do it. I know people don't like it, but I love people. And when I was in foreclosure, nobody knocked on my door to help me. So when I can help another person, I feel a lot of gratitude for that.
Well, you don't strike me as an introvert. So it doesn't surprise me that you enjoy door knocking.
I really do. Because people are in foreclosure. Only to the people that are in foreclosure. I'm not like going door to door. people in foreclosure, but I know when I was in that situation, how hopeless I felt. I know how hopeless people feel today, still individually. And it's like, you know what? I want to try to help people. I was that person. And now I have money and I am this person. So I want to teach people like, hey, there's lots of things in investing. Let's teach you how to make money faster so people can start building generational wealth. So I'm all about helping people build generational wealth.
Now that's a challenge. You mentioned that when you're door knocking, you're often door knocking on people who are entering foreclosure. And, it sounds like you come in with the right mindset of like, you're trying to help people. And that's often something that a lot of people don't really consider when they think about it, is that, you're trying to be a problem solver.
Yes.
But have you, you're often dealing with people they're not in the best financial circumstances. They're probably not all that happy to necessarily have somebody like knock on their door and say, hey, I understand you're going through foreclosure. Can I buy your house?
Well, they do. They do. I have a little package. I don't think I have it handy here. It's a little package my husband put together, and it has 10. So it basically says, "Are you facing foreclosure? These are 10 options to help you buy time to stay in your home." So when I do meet a person, or when one of my students meets a person, or one of my door knockers, they say basically, I was doing some research to see you have a pending problem with your property, specialize in helping folks like you solve their problem. And I want to give you this package with these 10 options and let you know, what are you doing now? And it basically talks to them about a loan modification, a forbearance agreement, all the options that people have. So when you come with the mindset to help the homeowners, they're really interested, because I don't ever say I want to buy your house. So these are 10 options that buy time for you to stay in your house, because that's what they want to hear. And then the reality is they usually can't. And then they work with us. So they get to move, they get a fresh start, they get out of foreclosure, we get a good deal. We wholesale it or rehab it or keep it or add it to our portfolio or whatever. And the same thing with, like I told Clint, we're in Clinton, Iowa. We're rehabbing, like literally, we're re-beautifying this entire downtown. All these buildings that we bought, all of them are in distress. The owners had died. The widows didn't want the properties. Every single one of these was in distress, as are the single family homes. But we bought 28 buildings and only one came from the bank. Every house, every building, the one I'm in right now, all were in distress. So it works across the board. It's not just single family, it's commercial too.
Wow. Yeah, I love how those lessons translate and your ability to connect with people and to come to them with an answer, especially when they have a problem.
Yeah.
I think that's a beautiful way to approach that. It's a good attitude. Let me ask you this. So you mentioned before about going from your wholesaling days into things that you mentioned, the day you stop working is the day you stop getting paid, and kind of shifting mindset towards things that are going to be more towards the generational wealth side of things. The timeline that we traditionally see, and I'm more speaking about the younger wholesalers, like over a 10 to 15 year period, a lot of times you see people start out with wholesaling because they don't have any money, but they're willing to trade time for hustle to make the money, right?
Yeah,
So
that was me.
They'll start wholesaling, have some success. A lot of times they realize that they're passing off a lot of really good deals. So they start doing a few flips themselves, sometimes struggle on the first few, eventually start doing well. Eventually they realize, same thing with the flips. The day you stop working is the day you stop getting paid. And every time you wholesale or flip a property, you're getting paid once.
Yep.
So a lot of times those people make the transition towards single family homes. Eventually, a lot of them make the transition towards multifamily properties, and then eventually towards larger multifamily, because they realize if you go bigger, you can have an on-site manager, and
Yep.
the management expense ratio typically goes down with a larger property. Later on in their career, a lot of those investors, 50s, 60s, will start looking at syndication, because as we get older, typically your time becomes worth more than anything else. And then they rather make a little bit less, but have it be a completely hands-off investment.
Agreed.
And that's kind of the trajectory that we see with the people that start off in the wholesaling and flipping business. I'm curious to know what you think about that, how it kind of lines up with you, and when you decided to make the shift towards things that were going to have a longer place long-term place in your portfolio to generate passive or generational wealth, what options you went after in that avenue?
And, Clint, that is really kind of how it was. I was wholesaling like a crazy. Well, I rehabbed the first couple of houses because, they said we buy houses, we fix them up, we sell them. So I found a house, I lived in it, and then I realized that carpet and paint doesn't fix everything. So I was physically, for like the first 5 years, I rehabbed a lot of houses. I would move in, rehab them. My daughter's with me every day, never spent a day in daycare. We're working on houses, and I'm building cabinets at night when she's asleep, and I'm building screens. I'm putting in fans. Got shocked a lot. Electricity is like, it's not my thing. And so I was doing that. And then I discovered wholesaling after, actually. I rehabbed for about 4 or 5 years. And then someone said, you can just find those houses and sell them to another rehabber and just make money in between. I thought, that sounds a lot easier because I'm physically rehabbing my butt off day and night living in these houses. And so I took probably 7 straight years and just wholesaled like a crazy woman. And then I started to recognize, like, okay, if I take off a year, like, where's my money coming from? So like you were saying, when I started off with single family homes, and I bought some duplexes and I bought some fourplexes. And then I bought a couple commercial way back, like 15 years ago, 20 years ago, maybe. I bought a couple commercial buildings and rented those out. And I was like, oh, okay. And then my husband and I were coming to Clinton, Iowa to his high school reunions. And we've been together like 24 years, married 22. We started coming to these reunions, and there's such a cute downtown here. It's right on the Mississippi River, and it's like 3 blocks wide and 3 blocks deep, this little bit. And I was like, the whole downtown's so dilapidated. Like, what happened to this town? So we started getting involved in the downtown rebeautification and, finding it's all opportunity zone. There's all kinds of grants. There's all kinds of money available. And so we said, well, we'll just buy a building. And then we bought another building. And then like that woman told her friends, and she called and said, hey, this is Carolyn. My husband's been passed away. My buildings are empty. I've got 3 buildings. Do you want those? And then she told her friend, and next thing you know, everyone is calling us. And will you take my building? You take my building. We're like, oh my God. So we just kept buying them. Now we have 28 in this little tiny area. It's like, oh my God, what are we doing? But we're having the most fun. And I'm learning all kinds of things I didn't know about, grants and opportunity zones and historical buildings. And so I'm like in a new learning phase myself because this is new to me.
I love that.
So it's really fun. And you know what?
Yeah.
The thing was, you have to vote for things. So this is a town they're trying to like regenerate, like with music and festivals and, like a Hallmark movie. There's a winter fest, a summer fest, October, there's a fest for everything. And we have to vote. So the people in the downtown, our taxes go into a separate fund and we vote on things. And I came up with like, for 2 years, I played nice and I was like, hey, let's do Christmas in July. Let's do this. And I kept getting voted down. So finally I called the mayor and I was like, listen, how many buildings I need to own to control the vote? He goes, well, you need 28 parcels. I'm like, okay, just give me like 6 months. Then we bought some more parcels, and then we went back to the next meeting and said, okay, here's what we're doing. This is what's happening from now on, because y'all think you move too slow, you think too slow. Like, let's go. And so now, especially the last 2 years, the whole town's just bustling. And it's awesome to like be a part of something like that.
The opportunity zone concept is something a lot of people aren't aware of. And it was part of the 2017 tax package passed under the Trump administration. Love him or hate him, I thought it was a great program. I think it's a great idea to try and revitalize, allow communities and states to designate certain areas that they want to be revitalized and then provide incentives for investors to place capital there. But it's how are you seeing, because you're talking about how are you seeing it affect that specific town?
Well, I can tell you one thing. We weren't able to come here very much the last couple of years because my husband was, we were just fighting this crazy cancer battle, which he's 100% awesome now. So even just for a couple of years of not being here very much physically and being able to spend the summer here now, we can see such a difference. Like almost every building downtown's full. Breweries have come into town, restaurants have come in town, bakeries, shopping, boutiques. Like it's dramatically different than when we started five years ago. So we're like, this will be like a 5-year project. Now it'll be, with Bill's health, it'll be like a 7 or 8 year project. But just seeing it from day one till today, it's completely different. The property values have already gone up downtown 48%.
Wow.
Which is a lot. And I mean, the building that, this building I'm in right now, this is a 3-story building, office downstairs, 2 apartments. We paid $35,000 for this building. And I had it all rented out for $700 a floor. And it's like, it's $35,000 for the whole building. Like, so then I was like, I kicked everybody out. So we're going to just take over the whole building, which is why I'm in my little apartment with no podcast background right now. But the property values are going up a lot. People now are paying a lot more. But the opportunity zone, if you keep it for 10 years and you sell it, there's no capital gains. And people don't realize that. And it's like, listen, you sell it for 3 times what it's worth, like that's your money. And there's all these little towns all over America and little pockets. And even like some of the places you guys are buying, Kmart's and different things like that, a lot of those are probably in opportunity zones. And there's just money for everything, for roofs and windows and facades. Here, they're only for outside. But, like they're putting murals on, like you see a big 4-story building with a beautiful mural. Those murals are like $75,000. Well, they're giving us money to put murals on the buildings and things to just make it look like fun and trendy. And there's just a lot of money and I love that Trump did do that because it's in the whole country.
One of the markets that we're in, we have 2 properties that are qualified opportunities, and one's in Gastonia, North Carolina, and one's in Macon, Georgia. And in Macon, we bought it's called Piggly Wiggly, is the branded grocery store in the Southeast. We bought an old Piggly Wiggly grocery store and converted it. Vacant building, hole in the roof, homeless people living inside of it. We bought it for $850,000, putting $3.2 million into it, and stabilized valuation is $13.4 million.
So great.
But we bought that property because it has opportunity for all of that gain to be tax-free if the money that went in was a capital gain at the end of 10 years. And there's a $44 million revitalization program going in just down the street, a mile away, a 10,000 person music amphitheater, outdoor shopping and eatery. And it's all because people liquidated other projects. They took those capital gains and they poured it into these smaller communities or dilapidated communities that really needed the help. So I thought that was one of the ways that they moved money into these communities in a meaningful way, and that they made people stick around for 10 years. I love that because you're investing, you guys are in that community and you're going to be there for a decade. And you're obviously the best thing that has happened to that little downtown in a very long time. And to be able to be there, put roots in and care about your projects, I think that's great. It does incentivize people sometimes to liquidate at 10 years. When you get a property like that, a lot of times you want that to be a part of your portfolio for a very long time.
I do.
To create some of that passive wealth. But at the same time, when that 10-year mark rolls around, you start looking at those dollar signs and realizing there's no taxes on that. It might be time to go look for greener pastures.
Yeah,
but you're right. It's created a lot of pockets.
When we finish this little town and we're done with everything that we've got, I think I'll probably do it again, like find another town nearby. Because this is along the Mississippi River, and there's all kinds of towns all along that were just like had, the Sears and the JCPenney and had all the stuff, and everybody went and they were packed all the time. There's a lot of them that just are the big companies left. Like, you guys buy like the Kmart's and stuff. They left. Like this town had a JCPenney, which is one of the buildings that we bought. And it's a giant 2-story JCPenney. We paid $28,000 for the building. And I got 20,000 square feet. And now we put an antique mall in there. And we've got 100 vendors and people coming in and shopping. And, so I like this new sort of thing. But it's also in neighborhoods too. Like there are pockets of all cities where there's like 2 or 3 blocks in a neighborhood of single family homes. And if you buy those, they're cheaper than, and maybe on this side of the street, There's an opportunity zone over there. It's not, because they want to fix up like some of the crack houses and fix them up and stuff. So I've got my kids buying those. And so far we have purchased over 78 buildings just in this town. And the values we're about ready to price ourselves out.
You are your own comps.
Huh? I was like, all right, we are our own comps. We're gonna have to like move over to the next little town because everything's getting pricey over here. But people don't realize the opportunity zones are not all commercial; they're in neighborhoods. And if you're looking to buy rentals or even multi-use or buildings or anything, a lot of them are in the zones. They just want to bring up the neighborhood.
Well, it's such a great example of the way of how local real estate is. Most real estate investors have been doing this for a few years right now, are all whining about, oh, there's no deals to find. All the hot markets that I used to invest in I'm priced out of those markets and they make no sense anymore. And here you've got these people that are, investing in small town Iowa, and you're killing it.
Yeah.
And it's just a reminder that there's anytime goes, oh, real estate's overpriced now. You can't get any good deals right now. It's like, where are you talking about? Like, if you're talking about downtown Charlotte, North Carolina, yeah, you probably missed the train there. But we talked to somebody the other night that was doing stuff in Toronto, that was doing fantastic. And here you are in I'm not going to say the name Iowa because it's got bad connotations.
That's my name.
But but you've now you're sort of rode that train now, and you're having to look for maybe other opportunities. Is that correct?
Yeah. And they're everywhere. We are based out of Denver, Colorado. We live up in the mountains outside Denver. And so up in our little mountain town, it's a really small. There's like 7,500 people. It's a little town. So there's not any opportunity zones in that little town, but like Pueblo's nearby. And so a lot of people that are in Colorado, I'm like, listen, go invest money in Pueblo. Like the whole thing's an opportunity zone. Everything is cheap. There's vacant buildings everywhere. There's so much to do. And even in downtown, like in Denver, in the city all around Denver, there's opportunity zones everywhere for residential and multi-use and they're just everywhere. But I don't think a lot of people know that they can just Google that and Google your state or your city or area, and you can find 10 blocks that are not and 2 blocks that are, and 10 blocks that are not. And over here is like a half a block. And all those areas have all kinds of money, all kinds of grants, all kinds of things they'll just give to you. So it's like, why not invest in places like that?
Yeah. Listen, that's the power of community and networking and getting it out there and letting people know what's available, because a lot of people just don't read the fine print on when things come out. And people want to see, with qualified opportunity zones, there hasn't been anybody that has exited a deal yet. It's a 10-year hold, and it started in 2017. Yeah. So it took a few years for people to kind of start dipping their toe in, and there's still some trepidation as to how it's going to look on the back end. But the reality is, if you wait for that, you've already missed the bus, and it's the people that are taking action up front that are going to have access to that. I love that you're freely sharing a lot of the information about what you're doing, and I'm not surprised, because I also know that you do a lot of coaching. You've written a lot. You're an author as well. So talk to us about the type of coaching that you offer, how you got into that, and what are some of the most important things that you want to share with people that might be looking for something like that.
So when I work with people, I guess it's kind of like the homeowners. I want to help the people that are in foreclosure, because I was that person. And with the coaching, I like to work with new investors, because I was also a new investor. You gotta remember, like when I started, there were no RIA groups, there was no meetup, like this stuff just didn't exist. And it was really hard to get trained and to get educated. And now with the internet, there's too many people. There's 80 million people that have a training course, and nobody, it's like, who do you know who to work with, where to start, like who can you trust, and so I like to just try to take people that are newer and just, get them to think like on a bigger scale. Like if you want to rehab have a few Airbnbs, whatever, but you need to get into bigger things. as quick as possible. So I feel like that's, where the money's at for things. But some people just want to, like, rehab a little house, have a little rental. They want to retire. They want stuff to putter around on. So I'll help anybody on any level. Except syndications, I'm going to have to send them to you.
Yeah, there you go.
Because I have not gotten into that. And there's too many great people already doing it. So I was like, I'll just send people your way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Clint and I, we talk about this all the time, which is in order to be successful in real estate, you have to have a combination of time, experience, and money. And you got to have at least one. If you don't have any money, then you need to leverage your time. If you don't have any experience, then you need to leverage your time to get the experience and money. So oftentimes the people that are coming to you are going to be the people who don't have any experience, and they maybe don't have a lot of money, and they're trying to leverage their time in order to build up the experience and build up the money to then, as you say, very quickly move on to bigger things.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, when I was rehabbing those first couple houses, I lived in the houses, and I used my Home Depot credit card. I lived on credit cards like my whole first deal. And then I made $22,000, which doesn't seem like a ton of money today. But 35 year's ago, that was an entire year's salary. So I was just like, wow, I got a whole year's salary in the bank. Oh my God, I'm so rich right now. And then I did another rehab and I made $50,000. I was like, look at all this money. I'm so rich, because you're rich. And then I did another one. I made like 30. I was like, oh, this is it. I'm doing real estate forever. I'm so rich. Because at the time, it seemed like so much money to me. And there are a lot of people that don't have the money and they need someone to help them. It's like, hey, wholesale something. Just find a house, sell it to a rehabber, make 25 grand, put some money in the bank, and then, keep educating and keep learning and keep getting on podcasts and keep, listening and finding in somewhere you'll find something that feels like it's the right thing for you. And then that's what you should do. I mean, there's a million things to do in real estate.
Absolutely. And I want to take that coaching question a little bit of a step farther, because you and I had the pleasure of chatting before Neil joined us. I want you to tell us a little bit about your strategy for the way that you've coached your kids and some of the things. Neil's got a young son. I've got 2 young boys. In terms of some of the lessons you're trying to impart and the things that you've done basically to create obstacles in their way to make life a little bit tougher, because there were lessons that they needed to learn along the way. So talk to us about some of the things that you did as they were growing up to push them in the right direction.
How old are your kids?
Mine are 4 and 1. So I've got real little kids.
And
9. 9 going on 10.
So when our kids, when they're little, they're little. But when they got old enough, like we always gave. So a couple things I read that millionaires do for their kids. A long time ago, I read a book. I couldn't even tell you the name of it, but little things was like starting.
It's called The Millionaire Next Door.
I read that book too. I love that. But I read that book in my 20s before I ever did a deal. But like little stuff is like we started our kids off with an allowance. If you're 9, you get $9 a week. If you're 10, you get 10, whatever. And then we gave them opportunities to help us work in houses and work on things and earn money. And if they wanted to buy a big purchase, they had to save half and we would put up the other half. But every single thing the kids did, I didn't give them money for anything. They had to earn all their money because I had to as a kid. And now that I have a gob of it, I'm not just going to give it to the kids because, that doesn't teach them anything. And so everything that my kids have. And then so what I started doing when they got a little older, and this is a good advice maybe for you guys, we paid them to read books. So we had this deal on the first of the month. I would pick out a book, and they were all business books. Everything was a business book about stocks, real estate, talking, negotiating, neuro-linguistic programming, all business books. We would pay them. We had like a bookshelf, and you could pick these books. They'd read a book, and and it was strict. You had to have it picked out by the first day of the month. And on the last day of the month, you had to write a 10-page book report, stand up, properly dressed, and give a full book report to the family. And then there was a Q&A. We'd ask questions to make sure they read the book. And then and we paid them like $200 a book. So my kids in high school, if they wanted to earn money, they had to read a business book through all of high school. And we picked all the books. By the time my kids were like juniors, people would be like, your kids sound like they're 35-year-old adults. And we made them read
love
books.
that.
And then whatever that book was, we quickly discovered they would like share the report with the other kid. So within like a month or two, it was like, okay, that book's going in the safe till next year.
They're gaming the system.
There's 3 of them, and they're like, oh yeah, we'll get around this system real quick. But we made them read like all the things, like the Think and Grow Rich and the Rich Dad books, and just thinking, the Growing Friends and the Tony Robbins books, and anything about real estate, investing, stock market. So they had to read, and they had to do a book. And if they're like, oh, I don't need any money this month, and they didn't want to do one, then they came up and said, oh, I do need a book. It's like, no. And if they didn't come and pick a book out till the second instead of on the first, they didn't get that month. They had to be on time, proper report, typed up, written, dressed like Toastmasters, giving a report to us. And so they read 12 books a year for all 4 years of high school that were all business books. And it really changed the way they talk and the way they think. And they sound like, when you're talking to them, they sound like they're 50 years old when they were 18.
That's amazing.
So
yeah,
I helped educate them that way. And then we had them work on things with us, and then showing them like, hey, my son, you want an $8,000 dirt bike, you've got to make $4,000 and I'll give you the other 4. And they wanted expensive things. And I was like, I'll pay half. And now they all have rentals. They all have commercial buildings. They all have passive income, and they're all in their 30s, and they have all this great stuff going on. And then they still travel and, do all their things. And so I don't know, I feel like I did a good job of not just handing it over, making them work and educating them.
I feel like you did too. Yeah, frankly, I'm proud of you. Good job.
Yeah.
That gives me a lot of good things to work. I'm constantly looking for things. Like, that's the most important thing, the most important role that I have. So I've started, like, my youngest son, he's 4. We have honeybees, and he's taken care of the bees for the last year, and then bottled the honey, and he sold the honey and made, 10% goes to church, 10% goes to saving, and the rest of it is getting reinvested to buying more beehives. And like the idea of scale, at first it took a lot of explaining. If you want to go blow it on buying toys, we would blow it on buying toys. But the reality is, like, there's a lesson there too.
Yeah.
And when you circle back and that toy's not popular anymore, a month later, there's another conversation to be had, right? So it's always about these little things that you can try to do to nudge them in the right direction. I think you took it to another level, and I'm glad I asked that question.
Yeah. So they read, there's not any business book, any big book, and some of them are 300 pages. So they're big books, and you got a month to read it, report, and do that. And if we ever had company, like I remember my daughter had to do a book report, it was due Christmas. We had like 30 people at our house. And I was like, book report's due today. She had to stand out in front of everyone, and they can't do ums and ahs. Like, I hit a little thing like Toastmasters, and then she was a wreck, and everybody's asking questions, and she did great, and they all did great. But my grandkids, I have 4 grandkids now. When they turn 5, we buy them a candy machine. So they have candy machines around town, and they have to take care of it, clean it, take the candy out, put new candy in. They have to use all the quarters, and they have to buy candy. And they have to keep their machines full. And when they come to town, the first thing they do, I want to go check on my assets. I want to go look at my investments. And they grab their little keys, their little blue money bag, and they run down to their candy machine. And my one granddaughter put in some super cheap candy one time. Next time she came back, the machine was full. Said, you got bad inventory, man. Nobody wants that candy. You got to put in some good stuff. So, oh, you spent money. I said, I don't care what you spent. You didn't spend enough. So she dumped all this candy out, put in like M&Ms or something, and it was empty in like 2 weeks. So they even understand, like, you got to have quality inventory, or your machines are full when you come back the next time in town. So even my little grandkids have candy machines. My one has a little horse that you ride, like at the outside the Walmart. She has a horse, and my little grandson has a little claw machine. And
I love it.
They come in town, grab their keys, let's go look at my machines, and they fill them up, and they pay for everything.
That's so cool.
And so I thought, we'll teach the grandkids too.
So, Dwan, you've played this amazing, long, real-life game of Monopoly, going from wholesaling to buying single-family homes to buying duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, larger multifamily, now office buildings. What's next? What scares you next that you want to tackle?
It's funny because I don't really know, because when we're done with this whole downtown, I feel like I want to find another little town. I don't know. It's really fun. It's something that I never, if someone would have said to me a year ago, oh yeah, you and your husband are like buy most of this downtown and rehab the town, I'd be like, I don't think so. Like, who just buys towns? Like, that's not even like in a conversation I've ever had with the person. No, I'm like, I think I'm going to do it again. So I don't know. I'm going to look around. I'm going to find something cute. I think I'm going to do another little town. They're super fun. This is like the most fun I've ever had.
That's great stuff. Well, listen, Dwan, you host the most wonderful real estate podcast ever. If any of our listeners want to check you out and find out more of what you're all about, is that the best place for them to go?
Sure. They can go to my website. It's just dwanderful.com. So I told Clint, I took my name Dwan and wonderful, and I made a word. So this is the world of Dwanderful. So people can go to my website, and I've got free ebooks and, training, webinars people can watch. Just, lots of information for people to at least take the first step. So I just really encourage people, like, no matter where you are in your life, just take the first step. Once you take the first step, then you take the second step, and then you meet more people, listen to more shows like yours, like mine. Next thing you know, people are kicking butt, taking names and making money, and they're not in there, working all day and all night, busting the butt for things. Get passive as quickly as you can.
100%.
As quickly as you can.
Yep. Well, listen, Dwan, this has been great. Thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and your time.
I appreciate you having me on today.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a lot of fun. Thanks for those lessons. There's a lot of things I'm going to take home and have a conversation with my wife about.
I'm going to be texting you guys in a couple of years and go, hey, what are your kids reading? And one of those books better be mine. I've got 3 bestsellers, so one of them better be my book.
I'll put it on the shelf. Sounds like a stocking stuffer. Thank you, Dwan. We really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, guys. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much for listening and watching the Truly Passive Income podcast. If you liked the show, if you think it would be useful for someone else, the greatest compliment that you could give us would be to share the episode, leave a comment down below, or leave us an honest review. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to let us know down below. And remember, with truly passive income comes freedom of time, place, and the freedom to pursue your higher purpose.